Everybody all together. Everybody feel better?
Yes.
Excellent. How's everybody doing? Wow, that was really tepid. How's everybody doing? Come on.
Come on.
Let's show a little energy. Energy secretary. Anyway. It's going to be a long 17 minutes. You know, Secretary Granholm, you've listed out a number of the initiatives that you're all rolling out here. And polling shows that a lot of Americans, climate may still not be at the top of their list, although I think when I go out and I'm doing stories and I'm talking with people, I think the polling is missing that. I think people are intrinsically concerned about our climate. What's your feeling on that?
Well, when you see the number of these extreme weather events and how they have cascaded all across the country, I think that people are getting that, hey, this, how many records are we going to break every year? Last year, record-breaking year, it's going to be the coolest year we've ever experienced if we don't get our act together, right? So I think that there's starting to be a realization. I do, this crowd is very savvy, and they've all done a lot of polling and know the language that has been resonant in the past up to this point has been language often, depending on your audience, right, around for communities that have not really, that think, they're skeptical, the language around jobs and the economy, the economy of clean energy, future-facing jobs your kids can take on, that's resonant. But I do think that these events are speaking for themselves, right? Are speaking for people. I'm glad to hear that you're feeling like there seems to be some kind of shift in the direction of recognition that this is the existential crisis of our time.
Yeah, as you know, we report on it during the day and on the Today Show and our NBC News Climate Unit. We do these different stories. I think people are looking for solutions. So, and I think connections have to be made. So as you roll out infrastructure, as you roll out these initiatives, how do you make sure people make that connection?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's one of the reasons why the president, and you'll be hearing from Deb Haaland shortly, right, is sent the cabinet around to so many states. What I like to do in states, because it's within my jurisdiction, is to break it down for what it means for a family, a person. So, for example, if I visit a homeowner in Tennessee who had their house weatherized because the president's agenda has plussed up the weatherization funding, tenfold. But those numbers, billions of dollars, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But when somebody pulls out their electric bill after their home has been weatherized and they show you the bill before and they show you the bill after and they've saved $300 because they've weatherized their home, that's real. It's very human. And so those stories around the country are really important. And the second bit of story around the country that I think is starting to resonate is that in all of these states, even in states that might be considered more skeptical, so much of these investments in manufacturing facilities, et cetera, building batteries and EVs and solar panels. We're building all these solar panels in Georgia and Alabama and Ohio. And people love that notion of their kids working at a future-facing career in clean energy. They love the notion of people being able to stay in their community. These jobs are really great jobs. And so because of those investments around the country and all the pockets of America, I feel like that is another way that it's resonant. So stories on the ground of people getting jobs in this space, good paying jobs, union jobs, and the story of how individuals may be benefiting from adopting some of these technologies, I think are ways to get it out. Now, the question is, how do you take one little story and amplify it when we have such a bifurcated, trifurcated, multifurcated media environment, right? It takes a lot of strategy to be able to do that. And fortunately, there's a lot of great strategists who are in the room trying to figure that out as I speak.
You were talking about these clean energy jobs. We've been kind of leaders in propane and natural gas, things like that. But how difficult, there's just a story in the news recently about China moving forward to become energy dominant in clean energy.
Yeah.
How are we going to compete with that? How are we going to make sure that we're the dominant factor?
Well, let's just say this. There's enough work to go around. China has a lot of work to do, and I'm glad that they are investing in a lot of solar, for example, but they're also still investing in coal. They want to be leading on electric vehicles, so do we. This is from a dominance perspective, these laws that we have passed in the United States have really put us on the path to meet our goals, our strategy from COP and Paris, et cetera. That's not so much the case with China, but we have got the technology here. The technologies always start here. We've got 17 national labs at the DOE that we are working on next generation technologies. We always, they go from concept to lab to, maybe early stage deployment, early stage demonstration. And then in the past, China has come and has been successful in, because of their industrial strategy, in luring those investments there. And this is why what the president has done is so remarkable, because he has said, no, we're not going to just sit back and allow other countries to poach our technology. We're going to create an environment that makes the United States the irresistible nation to invest. And most companies, certainly in the industrialized world, prefer to work with countries where there's rule of law and where their IP is not stolen and all of that. And so the United States becomes now a place where we've put these 30% tax credits on the table, and we are competitive with other countries that are also doing a lot of industrial strategy as well. So to me, this strategy of creating a green industrial strategy and focusing on the supply chains where we've lost a lot of it, including incentivizing, identifying, pulling those here, it's working. 600 factories have announced that they are opening up in the United States in all pockets of the country since these bills were passed. So
talk about that. The government can't do this by itself.
No, that's right.
There has to be a private,
completely. It's private sector led, government enabled is how we describe it. Because obviously the private sector has got to be doing this. And then, the Inflation Reduction Act provides great tax credits, but obviously the private sector's got to be doing the investment in the capital as well.
Well, you talk about the IRA. The Republican Party they have a narrow majority, and they've on record have voted 31 times to try to repeal this thing. As we're looking ahead to 8 months and a re-election, how durable is this act when it comes to a change in administration?
Well, let me say a couple things. One is the tax credits are 10 years. So we're expecting that those tax credits are going to stay in place. People have acted in reliance upon those tax credits. They're still going into the ground right now as a result of that reliance. So it is highly unlikely that you would get a Congress that would undo all of that, especially since 60% or so of these investments have gone to red states. So this is part of the strategy we've been obsessed with at the Department of Energy. Deploy, deploy, deploy. Deploy, deploy, deploy. We've got to get this out as much as possible, as fast as we possibly can, because we want it to stick. And I just feel like it would be, it would just not happen, that it would be undone once all of these investments are out, because the business community would go crazy.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember the Peace Corps, how important the Peace Corps was. Talk to me about the American Climate Corps.
The Peace Corps still exists.
I know,
Okay.
but I do. We weren't burying the Peace Corps, but in addition to the Peace Corps, I remember back before it was just the Corps. But the American Climate Corps, as a young person thinking about this, what excites you about that?
Well, first of all, young people are totally so many young people are totally focused on climate and climate change and feeling like they have a responsibility to make a difference in this. And this will give, so we started out with 20,000. The goal was to get 20,000 young people to be partnered with through AmeriCorps, et cetera, and with the positions that we're creating inside of the federal government as a partner. And then he announced, the president announced he wants to get to 60,000 by 2030. That is an army of climate warriors, which is fantastic. I mean, the more people who work in this area, the more committed they are to it, the more determined they are that stuff won't go backwards but only forwards. I think, you know, to me, those are warriors I want to be in the trenches with.
You know, so much about climate tends to disproportionately affect communities of color, communities that are disadvantaged. You know, your administration, you know, you've $366 million to prioritize renewable energy on tribal land. You know, so many communities that have people of color are being disproportionately affected. How important is this when it comes to environmental injustice to try to rectify that?
Yeah, this is such an important piece of the structure of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, that the incentives to address structural inequity by embedding structural equity into the incentives is really important. So for example, say you are a solar developer and you want to do a community solar project. If you get a 30% tax credit, not just a tax deduction, tax credit, right? On top of that, if you locate that project in a disadvantaged community, you get another 10% stacked on. If you use American content, meaning US-made solar panels, you get another 10% tacked onto it. If you pay prevailing wage and use apprenticeships, you get another 10% tacked on. If you're going to a tribal community, you might get another 10 to 20% tacked on. You could get up to 70% tax credit for this, going to places that have been burdened. And we know, I mean, here in Miami, every community, the poor bear the disproportionate burden, both in cost and in health. And, you know, communities have been bisected by not just freeways, but by refineries, and it's wrong. And so, number one, the tax incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act take us a good way to repair and heal. The second, and by the way, just one piece of data on that, is that studies have shown since the passage, the investments that have been 2 times the investments have gone to disadvantaged communities than to other communities that are in similar populations. So it's been working. The president, of course, has a Justice 40 initiative. It was one of the first executive orders that he signed to make sure that 40% of the benefits of these investments go to disadvantaged communities, communities of color. And so the Department of Energy, so we've got tax credits for the Inflation Reduction Act, and we have grants, right, for the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And they work together. One creates supply, one creates demand. On the supply side, on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law side, when a company is applying for a funding opportunity announcement at the DOE, for the first time in the history of the DOE, we require a community benefits plan for them to be able to get the funding, and their proposal is graded on the strength of that plan. 20% of their overall, you know, they have to have technical merit, et cetera, but they have to have a community benefits plan, and that means the community has to be at the table. What are the jobs that will go to the community? What is the health benefits that will renound to the community? So those factors are really important for us. We have created a whole new office of energy justice and equity to be able to help oversee our efforts in this. And to me, too, this is something that's really important to be durable and to embed in our processes so that the next energy secretary does not undo it.
Assuming there is a next.
Well, there will be at some point. There will be
a change.
Right,
one doesn't know.
Change.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. In closing, what do you know that makes you feel optimistic about where we're going?
Well, I feel so lucky to be Energy Secretary at this moment, having access to the 17 national labs who do all of this modeling. And what makes me feel optimistic is what I was showing before you came out, is the trajectory of the ability for us to get to net zero by 2050, to really be leading in the world on how it's done, makes me so happy. Not Pollyanna, we have a work to do, but I feel like we have taken the biggest step of certainly my lifetime to be able to address climate change, and that makes me extraordinarily happy.
All right. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for what you do.